plane has crashed into the World Trade Center.
Virgin Australia has collapsed into voluntary administration.
After weeks on a so-called Go Slow protest, for this march, teachers ran.
We have no idea how many were on board or what the extent of the injuries are right now.
In New York,
Australia's second largest airline grounded.
Never in history has the aviation industry had to park so many planes at once,
taking with it 16,000 jobs.
The trickle-down effects of these shortages has caused the decline in the productivity of the public transport and logistics industry.
the plane
on a
has
so-called Go
crashed
Slow
into the
protest,
World
for this
Trade
march,
Center
teachers ran.
in New York.
No company is immune to crisis. Times can change, and in the blink of an eye, your company and everything you have worked so hard for. While that scenario has happened to a lot of people, there is a saving grace: crisis management. This is when an organization deals with a disruptive and unexpected event that threatens to harm the organization or its stakeholders. To explain further, our guest this evening is Managing Partner at Thornton, Kalyanaraman Vijay.
Crisis management is effectively how are you able to come out of a crisis. How is the organization resilient to come out of a challenge which they didn't comprehend? So that's a crux, how proactive we've been to face a challenge.
So what makes for an effective crisis management plan?
An effective crisis management pack should be just reflecting on the practical challenges a company is exposed to. If you look from a 360 degrees to say in terms of people, in terms of processes, in terms of system, in terms of my suppliers, working capital, every segment is involved in an organization's success. So when any of these core systems potentially fall, it will affect the other segments in the organization as well. So it's a realistic assessment of what could be the challenges which could hit me and how are we addressing such potential crisis by having a mitigant in place.
Well, for that plan to be there has to be people who came up with the plan. So what makes for an effective crisis management team that comes up with that plan?
For any plan, a plan is only as good as the team which is behind the plan. So there is no point in having a piece of paper called plan when it is not bought in by the team. So I would always believe in it should have a good representation from various segments within an organization. So if you take an organization has got say 5 core teams within, ideally it should have representation from each of the team, so that it could be the team leader or one of the members who can come up with setting these are the aspects which I think I'm a bit worried about. We need to have a backup in place. So you have a holistic view when you have wide representation, and typically it is human in nature. When people are involved and a product comes out of that, they consider themselves as owner of that product than being cut down and said, here's something, follow it. I think this principle works across. I was about to say that it might be slightly different for a smaller organization, but the concept is the same. Any document, once it is owned by the people, the chances for it to be successful is much more than otherwise. If they're not involved in the development of that, they probably may not feel the document.
What is the worst case scenario that could happen to any company, be it like corporate or SMME, in cases where there's no crisis management plan or a crisis management team?
They end up being reactive or in some instance even inactive. You know, records globally, what statistics say that more than 90% of businesses which start do not survive the first 3 years, which is a very staggering number. It is all, and it comes out very clear that they would have missed certain aspects which are fundamental to a business. So if you say you plan your whole business around one customer, and now that customer says, I'm no longer going to support you, the business collapses. So these are the aspects to be realistic about. And when a company is not investing its resources on planning for any contingency, their likelihood of sustaining a contingency when it becomes a reality is very remote. Yes, luck plays a very important role. God's blessing plays a very important role in all these things. But we can't be depending on these things. It is our duty to make sure that there is a plan in place. So that way I would say it is quite important for a management to have a very involved plan to face any contingency. Lockdown is something which I don't think even in Jan 2020 we wouldn't have really thought about it, about 1st of April we'll all be in a lockdown. We've never comprehended such a scenario that globally every country in the world is just going to be in a lockdown. This is an extreme thing. Maybe some businesses got hit very, very badly. Very unfortunate. But having said that, sir, many other contingencies, like I'm saying your server collapsing or a key member of the team suddenly leaving are things which, or a customer moving out of the business, things like that are things which needs to be planned on a regular basis. So that you don't put too much, all eggs cannot be in one basket, it needs to be well spread.